So today we're going to learn about several things. The slides are organized now so it becomes quite clear to you as we move through when we're shifting to new topics. First of all, we're going to talk about estate planning, just basics. What is estate planning? What does it mean to have an estate plan? When do you make an estate plan? Then we're going to talk about lifetime planning or estate planning for parents, and we'll go through a few different things, financial planning, and also healthcare planning. And then we're going to talk about lifetime planning for children. So again, financial planning and healthcare planning for children. Then we're going to talk about trusts, which is this legal concept which sounds potentially very odd and foreign. So we'll get right into trusts and talk to you about that. Then we're going to go into tax planning and a few different things from a tax perspective specifically. So we'll talk about estate freezes, which is particularly relevant to people who have family businesses or corporations. And we're going to talk about those and what that means. It sounds very odd, estate freezes.
But the weather's getting colder next week, so
yes,
that's good.
So it's very timely. Then we're going to go through a case study of a particular family with 3 different children with 3 different sets of needs and how you can tax plan depending on the scenario. Then we're going to go through wills, and we're going to go through probating wills, and then we're going to talk about RDSPs, which are Registered Disability Savings Plans.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
And it's my job to advance the slides. So we're hoping that what you'll get from this is to understand the full range of options that are available to you. So we're going to hit high points and say, you know, we can do this, we can do that. And generally in estate planning, there's lots of possibilities. So it really depends on what your needs are, what your goals are, what your expectations are. And really the advisor is sort of like, I guess you could say that the advisor is sort of like a travel agent. And they, you know, you tell us where you want to go, and we'll get you there. It might be a circuitous route sometimes, but we'll get you through the complicated rules to where you want to be. We'll have some examples of how you use strategies, and the problem with estate planning is people tend to see it as an amorphous blob, but it's really specific tools for specific purposes. There are specific things that work for this and other things that work for that. We'll help you to understand a bit of the jargon so that you can articulate your objectives to the advisor and not be intimidated by the jargon that tends to crop up. Maybe make you a little more confident so that you can take control of your estate plan, because it is your estate plan. It's not my estate plan. I mean, if I was left to my druthers, I'd have a really complicated estate plan that would be lots of fun for me, because it's exciting, and the more complicated it is, the more challenging it is. But, you know, again, it's got to serve your objectives, and it's got to be something that makes sense to you. And hopefully put you in control of how you do the estate plan, so that you and it's a really exciting topic, and I'm sure that we'll have no problem keeping you awake. Okay, introduction to estate planning. Mm-hmm. Do you want to do the estate planning approaches?
Sure. So Blair kind of alluded to it a little bit when he was talking about our goals here, but we figured that there's 3 basic approaches that you can take to estate planning. You can do it yourself. There's lots of wills kits out there. You could walk down to Chapters and read a book and fill in some blanks, and there you go, you have a will, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a really complicated situation, and I think probably you're here because you might have a few complications, so you might not want to do it yourself, not entirely. So you could decide, well, I'll just go hire a lawyer, and whatever they say, I'll do. So leave it to the expert. That's an option for you. But I think, again, because you're here, that's not one that you're particularly interested in. You want to know some of the jargon, like Blair and I were talking about, and you want to know what the options are, all the different tools that are in the toolbox. You don't need to necessarily know how to use them, but you might want to know what's in that toolbox. So that's what we call the active participant approach, and we're hoping that all of you will feel empowered to be active participants after today. And again, we encourage those questions either on the index cards, or if there's any jargon that we're throwing out that's not clear, be an active participant today also here with us and ask those questions in whatever form you feel comfortable.
Right, because getting back to leaving it all to the expert, well, really, you're the experts on your situation. You're the expert on your family. And we want to emphasize that's really what the expertise comes from. So the professional is just to help you, but you're really the expert on what you need, and you're the expert on your children. So what is estate planning? Because we use the word estate, and we tend to think of estate of a dead person, a lot of people think estate planning is what you do after you die, but then when you say that, you say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Estate planning is from the old meaning of estate. You had the landed estate, you had your estate if you were a noble. And so the estate is everything you own. So you all have estates now. Everything you own is your estate. So really it should be called lifetime planning, but everybody uses estate planning, so we're stuck with the term. So it's really what you do before death to prepare for unexpected bumps in the road that might happen. So it's, you anticipate the worst, but hope for the best. So you put something in place so that if something unexpected happens, you have a process to deal with it. So again, I go to the travel agent analogy. It's like planning a vacation. You get some road maps, you figure out where you want to go, you maintain flexibility. So if it's raining, you can go to the museum that day. If it's a nice day, you can go to the beach. So you keep some flexibility, but you have a structure around which you build the flexibility. And it's nothing more than that. And the important thing is each traveler will have a different itinerary because each traveler has different goals. And it comes down to why are you traveling? What do you want to see? What do you want to do? So, estate planning toolbox.
Yes, we've mentioned this already a few times, but we wanted to emphasize that estate planning, I think also what happens when people think estate planning, they think, do I have a will? Yes, I'm done. I have an estate plan. No. That's not all it is. There's all sorts of tools in that estate planning toolbox, and we want...
You mean duct tape doesn't do it all?
No, unfortunately, although a good Canadian would say it does. But yeah, we just wanted to emphasize that there are lots of things, there's lots of tools. We're going to talk about several of them today. And one of the things Blair often says, which I think is true, if you give a man a hammer, the whole world starts to look like a nail. So, yeah.
And that's advisor bias. So you do have to be aware that when you're dealing with advisors, they're all going to have a bias. So I'm a tax guy, so I like to talk about tax. If you're talking to an insurance person, they're going to want to talk about insurance. And insurance can be a good tool for, it's primarily to provide a fund if something bad happens early. But insurance people are going to want to sell insurance, and that's going to be their expertise. And not saying that they're bad people. It's just that's what they like to talk about, and that's where their emphasis is going to be. So when you're dealing with somebody, you have to recognize that they do have these institutional biases, I guess, is what to call them, but where they're coming from, you have to take that into account with their advice, I think. So different tools for different tasks. Last will and testament, that's for dealing with what happens after you die. Powers of attorney are for dealing with what happens if you're incapacitated, but you're still alive, because your will doesn't kick in until after you die. So if you can't manage your affairs, you need somebody who can do that for you while you're alive. So you need both of those things. Healthcare agreements. Power of attorney only deals with financial stuff. And there's also an whole important part of our life, health decisions, personal care decisions. We need health care agreements so that somebody, if we're not able to make decisions about health care, we need to appoint somebody who can make those decisions on our behalf. And that person has to understand you, has to understand what your attitudes are about end-of-life care or even just where you want to live. So you need somebody who knows you well to make those decisions. Trusts can be useful, and they will be especially useful in combination with will planning if one of your children qualifies for the disability tax credit, and we'll talk about that. Corporations can be a useful tool. Registered disability savings plans are a useful tool, and I assume everybody in the audience probably has started one of those. Tax-free savings accounts and RRSPs are useful tools. They're not on the slide. I just thought of those. We have all these tools available for us, and we can mix and match them, and there's a whole breadth. So, Leonie, issues for parents of a disabled child.
Yes, I think Deborah actually mentioned this right at the beginning, but a big question, important question: what will happen to my child after I die or if I become incapacitated? We want to help you understand how to get there, how to have some answers. Financial security for your child is one thing, and then also an advocate for your child if you're not around to be that advocate. And then another, I think, important concern for people who have more than one child is fairness among children, and how do you integrate the needs of your child who has disability with the needs of your other children? What are the expectations? How do you consult as a family about those things? And how do you make sure that things are fair?
Mm-hmm. And that's something that you've probably already started, because if you have other children, they're going to be aware of the disability, and you have to start talking to them about, fair isn't necessarily equal. If somebody has more needs, then maybe that drives the estate planning and the ultimate objectives. But you have to make sure that the other children accept that and recognize that in order for the plan to work well. So that's why you can't leave it just to professionals, because you've got to have those family conversations, and it's really important that everybody understand. So flexibility is crucial. Plans are always based on expectations and what we think is going to happen. Projections are always wrong. Economists' projections are always wrong. Just even in the realm of economics, life happens and unexpected things happen. So we don't want to have a plan that is really, really rigid. We want to build in flexibility. And so we do that by giving people discretionary powers so they can react to different situations. But we want to pick somebody who has an understanding of how we would react.
Blair's talking about trusts right now when he talks about discretionary powers. So we'll get into that when we talk about trusts.
And powers of attorney.
And powers of attorney as well.
Yeah. So some people like to make things really rigid, and that tends to be a mistake.